Welcome to today's Explainer. I'm so glad you could make it. Pull up a chair, my young student, and let's sit down and talk about literally the most important choice you're ever going to make in your career. It's a choice you won't find in any textbook, but it's going to dictate the entire trajectory of your life. We're talking about the crossroads between the illusion of safety and the reality of true financial freedom. We're going to break down a fascinating source document today that perfectly captures the massive difference between trading your precious labor for wages and actually building income-generating assets. So, picture this. Two college grads, Austin and Ross. They start at the exact same bottom-floor mailroom in the tower building. They're making the exact same wages, sorting packages, pushing carts day in and day out. But they are heading toward vastly different destinies. See, Austin came from a background of struggle, so he naturally wanted to protect what he had. He grew comfortable. Ross, on the other hand, he came from pure hustle. He watched his mother work multiple jobs, and instead of settling, he dared to build what he didn't have. He grew restless.
Now, I want you to really let this powerful wisdom from Ross's hardworking mother sink in, because honestly, it is the absolute foundation of wealth. This is a lesson I learned way too late, my student, but you can use it right now. Rich people buy back their time, while everyone else just trades their time for wages. When you're stuck trading hours for dollars in a mailroom, your income is permanently capped by the clock. To break free from that, you've got to shift your entire paradigm.
And you really have to notice the stark psychological contrast between them here. While Austin saw his apartment and his ability to, occasionally eat out as this massive victory, a victory that kept him totally still and comfortable, Ross looked at his own situation with absolute clarity. Ross realized that after rent, gas, and groceries, he was saving literally nothing. Austin was just happy he wasn't where he used to be. But comfort, my friend, comfort can be a really dangerous trap if it stops you from growing.
So how do you escape that paycheck-to-paycheck cycle? Well, you have to drastically reduce your personal expenses. You need investment capital, and if your day job isn't handing it to you, you've got to create it yourself. Look at these practical steps. Monetize a spare living space, share housing costs, or just cut out those restaurant meals. Let's be real, your daily takeout habit is probably funding your landlord's retirement right now. You have to leverage practical steps like these to generate the capital you desperately need to start building real assets.
So what does Ross actually do? Well, he takes a leap. He puts a handwritten sign in his window and rents out his spare apartment rooms to his coworkers. Within just a few months, he's got 2 roommates completely covering his rent. He brought his own housing costs down to absolutely zero. Imagine the relief of never dreading the first of the month again. By completely wiping out his biggest monthly expense, Ross was suddenly able to stockpile every single extra dollar he brought in.
Now, Austin's reaction to this was super telling. He actually called Ross crazy for renting to strangers, and this just perfectly hits the nail on the head regarding the psychological difference between them. Austin feared the risk of the unknown. He was constantly seeking safety. But Ross was pursuing freedom. Ross understood that staying exactly the same, forever trapped by bills, was actually the most dangerous risk of all. If you want more out of life, you've got to be willing to solve problems instead of just hiding from change.
Okay, so with this freshly saved capital, Ross doesn't go out and buy a flashy watch or a new car. No way. He identifies a low-cost, real-world asset. He finds this old fruit and vegetable truck and he buys it for just $1,000 in cash. No debt, no massive stressful bank loans, just a simple, functional micro-business that he owns free and clear.
Even Ross felt a bit of fear after handing over that cash, which is totally normal. But just as I'm guiding you today, his mentor, his mother, gave him this exact blueprint. 3 incredibly small, actionable steps to convert his savings into a functional asset. First, start small. Buy a little produce without going into debt. Second, learn the people. And third, learn the streets. If nobody buys on day 1, don't panic. Just learn why. She beautifully redefined risk for him in that very moment. She explained that taking a calculated leap isn't jumping blind, not at all. It's having the courage to step forward when fear is screaming at you to stay safely frozen. That is what true faith in business looks like. It's not about reckless gambling. It's about taking that educated step forward, fully equipped with a plan, even when your heart is pounding out of your chest.
Following her brilliant advice, Ross takes his truck to food deserts. These are local neighborhoods completely lacking fresh produce. He sells apples, bananas, and greens to people who desperately need them. He didn't just guess what to sell, he actively looked for what his community complained about lacking. And that's a huge tip for you, my student. Listen to the daily frustrations of your neighbors, find the gap, and literally bring the solution to their doorstep. He wasn't just hustling for dollars anymore. He was solving local community problems for profit. And get this, on his very first day, he made half a week's paycheck.
But here's the kicker. Look at how Austin reacted to this success. Even after Ross totally proved the model worked, Austin still just didn't get it. Austin thought buying the truck was adding pressure, and that cash should only ever be kept for emergencies. This proves, without a doubt, that those trapped in a wage mindset view investments as a danger simply because they only understand expenses. They totally miss the fact that cash is a tool meant to create assets.
And Ross? Well, he didn't stop at the truck. He took his asset building to the absolute next level. He used his profits to buy a modest 3-bedroom house. Then, when his old landlord raised the rent on his former apartment, Ross let his old roommates move into his new house. And you guessed it, their rent completely covered his new mortgage.
This right here is the magic formula. It's the ultimate blueprint for shifting from working for money to making your money work for you. Just think about how this formula stacks up in his life right now. His produce truck generates daily profit. His tenants completely cover his mortgage, meaning his personal housing costs are zero all over again. His house builds equity every single month. And most importantly, his wealth is now stacking entirely independently of his physical labor in that mailroom.
Pretty soon, his assets were making twice his tower building salary. When Ross finally walked in and quit the mailroom, Austin gave him one last warning about how hard it is to find a job. Austin completely missed the point yet again. Ross wasn't hunting for employment anymore. As Ross told him, "I know how hard it is to find freedom." Ross had outgrown the mailroom because his mindset had completely outgrown the building.
So fast forward 15 years. Imagine a crowded, noisy sports bar, where our two former mailroom clerks finally reunite. They started at the exact same starting line, remember? But they operated on vastly different philosophies. Let's see exactly where those two different paths led them after a decade and a half.
Look closely at this final outcome, my friend. Austin actually did pretty well by traditional standards. He became a manager making close to 6 figures, but he worked more hours thinking it meant more money. And Ross? Well, Ross used small assets to buy back his time. He now owns 4 produce trucks, each pulling in 6 figures, plus multiple paid-off properties. Ross walked into that bar a self-made multi-millionaire.
When Austin confessed that he had worked all those years thinking security was the ultimate goal, Ross gently dropped what is probably the hardest truth of this entire explainer. Security without growth is nothing more than a comfortable cage. Austin had successfully protected his paycheck, sure, but he had traded away his ultimate freedom to do it. Austin sat there, quite literally, with tears in his eyes, wishing he had started building assets years ago. He really felt like he had completely missed his window. But as Ross wisely and compassionately told him, while the best time to start was years ago, the second best time is right now. It is never, ever too late to start applying this asset-building mindset to your own life. So as you navigate your own future, keep these key rules for long-term wealth front and center. You've absolutely got to make your money work for you. You have to build freedom, not just blindly protect a paycheck. Believe in what is possible from exactly where you stand right now. The real difference between Austin and Ross wasn't luck, and it definitely wasn't education. It was simply the courage to move when others stayed perfectly still. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a few serious questions to help guide your long-term wealth journey. I want you to sit down and really ask yourself, am I actively building a life of freedom, or am I just surviving month to month? Comfortable maybe, but completely stuck. Look really deeply at your current trajectory. Have you allowed the baseline comfort of a steady wage, having an apartment, a car, eating out occasionally, to completely blind you to the necessity of true financial independence? Listen, comfort is nice, for sure, but it is not the same thing as true success. Think critically about your immediate surroundings for a second. What local problems can you solve right now to generate profit? Remember, you do not need to build a massive tech startup. Ross did it with a simple $1,000 produce truck in a food desert. So what is your version of the produce truck? To figure that out, look at your own hobbies or the specific skills your friends are always asking you for help with. Honestly, that is your starting asset. Now, project your current habits, your current savings rate, and your current fears 15 years into the future. Seriously, if nothing changes, will you be Austin sitting at that bar wishing you had taken a leap? Or will you be the architect of your own time? And finally, I'll leave you with this one provocative thought. Are you going to let the fear of risk keep you trapped in a comfortable cage? Or will you take that small, calculated step today to build the assets that will ultimately set you free? The choice, my student, is entirely yours. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.